Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Daniel S. Loeb Torah Center. Just a few ideas before Rabbi Fahy does part 2 this morning. We talk about a liquid in this week's parsha. Having said that, I'll make a quick bracha over this particular liquid. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh bevaro. Okay, so the liquid which features most prominently in the parsha and obviously in the Mishkan was olive oil, shemen zayit zach. The idea of olive oil really plays a very central feature in the Mishkan, but also in Jewish life, in Jewish history, and in future Jewish events, as I'm going to prove to you this morning, Bezrat Hashem. So first of all, olives come from an olive tree, and they are native to the land of Israel. They are one of the Sheva Minim, one of the 7 species that grow naturally in the land of Israel, and we give them extra special shevach, extra special leadership among all the other fruits and vegetables that grow in the land of Israel. What is it about olive oil that they feature so prominently in the Mishkan? So oil rises above water and other liquids. And we like that idea. The Jewish people are compared to olives and to olive oil because they rise above. They take an upper position. This is one of the ideas of separation that the Jewish people need to have. The Mishkan featured oil, olive oil specifically, and that's actually one of the reasons I'm learning Hilchot Shabbat here upstairs when I give the halacha. When it comes to squeezing fruits on Shabbat, there are 2 that are on the level of Doraita, on a Torah level. You're not allowed on Shabbat to squeeze an olive for its juice or squeeze grapes for their juice on Shabbat. That is the level of Doraita on a Torah level. That you cannot do. Other fruits, you also cannot squeeze if they're normally squeezed for their juice, but that is on a rabbinic, a level of derabanan. However, by the way, you can squeeze lemon juice, said Ovadia Yosef, because lemons have a special status as well, and they're separate from the other fruits, because one usually doesn't just drink their juice for the idea of drinking their juice. But olive oil, olives and olive oil, and grape juice should not be squeezed from their fruits on Shabbat. They have a higher status, and they should be eaten, can be eaten, but not squeezed. What is it about olive oil that makes it so special? So we know from the days of Chanukah that the olive oil needed to be placed inside the menorah. The Yavanim, the Greeks, came into the Bet HaMikdash. They went up to the menorah and they desecrated it, and they desecrated all the oil. They understood. Why do they do that? Why would the Greeks come and attack oil? I mean, what's the big deal? As I mentioned before, this wasn't the first war about oil. This was the most important war that was based on oil. Why did they attack that? Because they realized the symbolism that olive oil represents, and that is the Jewish people. Specifically, one part of the Jewish people, and that is leadership. The leadership of Jewish people, they rise above the other people. I'll give you the very interesting proof for this. How does a king become a king in Jewish life? What is the process that makes him into the king? So, we've seen from the past that the ideal way is that the prophet, the Navi, gets a communication that this person is the future king of the Jewish people. That person would be informed. They'd be taken to a strong running stream of water, like the Gihon spring, which you can still visit today. I've been there many times. They would take olive oil. They would pour that olive oil onto the head of the future king. That process is called limshoch. Very good. Actually, the word Mashiach, which really means leadership, Sarara and Gedula, says Rashi, that was represented by this process of the prophet pouring olive oil in the shape of a crown onto the future king's head. This is what Shmuel did to Shaul. It's what he did to David HaMelech as well. Actually, what it was poured from is also important. When they used to pour this olive oil, and this is a big statement, very symbolic. Lahavdil, even the kings and queens of England have taken this process, and there is a secret part when they coronated King Charles III, whatever it was, like a year or so ago. They actually closed him behind screens during this process, and they also did we're not too sure exactly what they did, but they did a very similar thing using oil on the head. So this was actually taken by other kings, but it comes from us. And when David HaMelech was oiled and crowned in his position, they would take a horn, a keren, and they would fill it up with oil. And then they would take oil, olive oil, that Moshe Rabbeinu himself pressed, and they would add it to that oil. So the first ever king of Israel, Moshe Rabbeinu, if you don't include Avraham Avinu, although he was really a king of the Jewish people, and he would pour the oil onto the head saying, oh, you're now a continuation of great leaders among the Jewish people. So when the Greeks went in to the Heichal, they said, we're not going to just destroy the Jewish people and their Torah, which they tried to do. They made a beeline and went straight for the oil. Why? To say that we are your new leaders. The old leadership of Am Yisrael and Klal Yisrael are done, and we're going to represent this idea by destroying the shemen, by destroying the oil. Now, shemen, if you think about it, oil, specifically olive oil, is a connector. It connects. What does it connect? It connects the wick, the patil, and the ner, the fire itself. Without oil connecting the wick to the flame, right, you wouldn't have anything. The patil, the wick, would burn out, right, and the ner wouldn't be produced. You need oil. Oil, hashemen, is a connector. And we know this because if you rearrange the letters of hashemen, says the Vilna Gaon and many others, what do you get? Mishnah. Mishnah is also a connector. When you learn Mishnah, you are connecting to the oral Torah, Torah Sheba'al Peh. So the word letters hashemen rearrange into Mishneh, he says. So you actually have Mishnah. Mishnah is the connection, the first of a connection between the Torah Bichtav, the written Torah, and Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's the first oral Torah that was actually written down. If you rearrange the letters again, you get Shmona, 8. 8 is a number that connects this world to the next world. 7 represents this world, and 8 represents Olam Haba, the world of Neshamot, and the future world as well. That's why on Hanukkah there are 8 days that the miracle happened for. A baby is given a Brit Milah on the 8th day. That's Shmona, because he now takes on a new status of Am Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, and he rises above all other people as a Jew. So 8, Shmona, is the same letters as Hashem and the oil, which represents the 8 days of Hanukkah, and Mishnah, and of course, Neshama. The word Neshama is it's the same letters. The Neshama name is one of the 5 levels of the soul of the Neshama. But actually there are 2 below, the Nefesh and the Ruach, and 2 above. Right? The Chaya and Yechidah, says Kabbalah. So the middle level is the Neshama. It's a connector again. We're connected the 2 lower levels with the 2 higher levels. This is probably why, and this is my guess, right after this description of the shemen, zayit, zach, the olive oil that was put inside the menorah, we start to talk about the big day, kahuna, the clothing of the Cohen Gadol. You see that, right? Why are we going from oil in the menorah to the Cohen Gadol and his clothing. What's up with that? What's the connection? 8. 8. How many big day kahuna of the Cohen Gadol were there? Well, a regular Cohen Hediot. By the way, that's where idiot comes from. It's not an insult. Hediot just means a regular person. Hediot. So a Cohen Hediot, the regular Cohen, wore 4 items of clothing, but the Cohen Gadol had 8. And the Torah goes into great detail. It painstakingly goes through every single, and if he was chaser, one of the big day kahuna, if he was missing just one of them, chayav mitah, it was a terrible, terrible thing. Why? Because he is number 8. He represents 8ness in the Mishkan. The Melech, the king, the Mashiach of his day, he represents the number 8 outside. That's why he's given the oil outside. But in the Kodesh Kodoshim, in the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kodoshim, the Cohen Gadol takes on that role. So he has to wear 8 items of clothing to show that he, in terms of his clothing, rises above every other Kohen, and he is the spiritual root. And therefore, it makes sense the Avanim wanted to go in and destroy the number 8. The idea, and that's what they wanted to do, right? They wanted to take all of the Torah and make it into an everyday occurrence. They wanted to say, the Torah, the Bible, right? That's just something we study. It's just another form of knowledge. And the Jewish people are like, no. We are the people who rise above. We are the people who take the oil and we elevate it. And the Torah represents that idea. That is the neshama. That is the Mishnah. It rises above. It's not part of Olam Hazeh. It's a part of Olam Haba. To finish off before Ifai takes over, just one last idea. I think I mentioned it before, but I went to my rabbi before I became a rabbi, and I said, give me some advice. Give me some advice for this career. I just received my smicha from him and 2 other rabbis. And I said, please give me some advice for when it goes to, being a rabbi out in the world. I sat down with him, we discussed a lot of things. And he thought about it, and he stroked his beard, and he said, I'm going to tell you something very, very important, and I want you to remember what I'm telling you. And I was very excited, about to get advice from the Rosh Yeshiva about my career as a rabbi. What's he going to tell me? Make sure you keep learning Torah. Make sure you teach Hilchot Shabbat. I don't know. Right? Make sure your wife is happy. There's a million things he could have said. He said one thing to me. I promise you. The one thing he said to me just after I received my smicha, I had yechidut with him, was make sure you are always dressed well. Make sure your clothing is stainless. Make sure your shoes, make sure your beard is always trimmed. And I was like, that's it? That's what you're going to tell me? I'm about to go out, right, try to become a rabbi, work with Jewish people, and that's the only advice you're going to give me? And he said, absolutely. He said, if you're going to represent Am Yisrael and Klal Yisrael, you have to learn from the Cohen Gadol and from all the Kohanim. It was asur on a Doraita level, on a Torah level, for a Kohen to have a ketem, to have a stain on his clothes. If he's in big trouble. Why is that? Why do we care if the Kohanim have a stain? By the way, it was difficult. The Beit HaMikdash was full of a lot of blood, right? There was ashes, there's smoke, right? They're walking around barefoot, there's raw meat everywhere. Can you imagine the amount? This is like a Shabbat Su'udah for a 5-year-old, right? The end of the Su'udah, they're covered in cholent, right? The chamin, they're covered in all these foodstuffs, exactly what they've eaten based upon their shirt. You have the entire menu on their shirt, every single Su'udah. He says, if you're going to represent the Jewish people, learn from the Cohen Gadol. Make sure you're clean. And by the way, it doesn't apply to rabbis. This applies to every single religious Jew. Do you know how many times I'm heard from Jewish people, and specifically Israelis, who say, that Ramanim, so dirty, right? The rabbi, or he's always got dandruff. I don't have that problem, Baruch Hashem. But they've always got some problem. They always look dirty and disheveled. That is a chilul Hashem. To walk around dirty. We see from the Cohen Gadol this week's parasha. You need to have clean clothing. If you're going to represent the Jewish people, and you do represent, you walk around with a yarmulke, right? Even if you don't, they know you're Jewish. They see your nose. They know you're a Jew. You go into a business meeting. Don't walk in disheveled. I don't like it. It is a chilul Hashem. You make a Kiddush Hashem by the way you are dressed. If you're going to represent the Jewish people, I don't care if you're in sweatpants, I don't care if you wear shorts, I don't care if you're a sweater, a suit, make sure you are clean and make sure you're dressed well. That is one of the greatest Kiddush Hashems that a Jew can make. Based upon that, Hashem should bless you with clean clothes together with a clean neshama. Have a great and successful day.